After the first round of the 2026 NHL Draft, the St. Louis Blues walked away with some big changes to their forward core. They drafted center Tynan Lawrence and forward Maddox Dagenais and traded two of their first round picks to the Anaheim Ducks in exchange for Mason McTavish. Here on day two of the draft as well, the Blues traded two of their third round picks to the Toronto Maple Leafs for defenseman Brandon Carlo. Reactions to what the Blues have been up to these past couple days have been somewhat mixed from Blues fans. So the important question for us to answer is: did they waste their draft capital, or did they make some good moves and set themselves up in a good spot moving forward? What can we expect from their latest draft picks, Lawrence and Dagenais, the newest prospects in the system? All that and more on this episode of Note News. Welcome into the Note News podcast. We are a St. Louis Blues podcast. I am John Poston, joined as ever by the number one pick in the Note News draft, Alec Gow. Alec, how you doing? It's been a busy, less than 24 hours for the Blues.
Yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling good. I think the Blues didn't lose, and did I think, um, yeah. I mean, we'll get into it here, but there is a pretty heavy positive spin to all of this, and so I'm feeling pretty good. I think that the Blues certainly made some decisions. Some of them may be questionable,
Mm-hmm.
but are, like you said, walking away with a revamped forward core, and they attacked their one of their big weaknesses, which you can't really say is bad process. So yeah, I'm feeling decent, and I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Yeah, for sure. Today on the show, we're going to talk. We're going to try to move sort of in chronological order here and talk about the picks and moves as they rolled in. So we're going to start with that 11th overall pick, Tynan Lawrence. We're going to talk about the trade that the Blues made for Mason McTavish, and then we'll get to Maddox Dagenais, who was picked with the 16th overall pick. To wrap it up, we'll talk about Brandon Carlo, and I should say we have been pretty busy. So obviously the Blues made a Jordan Kyrou trade not long ago, and so if you want to check out our reaction to that one, uh, the trade in exchange for Connor McMichael and Milton Gastrin, go check out our last episode for that. We're gonna have a more dedicated episode out soon, where we really focus on the McTavish trade, the Carlo trade, um, and some of the other moves that the Blues have and have not made, like Robertson and Tkachuk. We're going to talk about sort of what these moves mean from a roster standpoint moving forward, especially starting next season. So stay tuned for that one, because that's where we're really going to dig into the McTavish trade. Today we're gonna focus a little bit more on the draft itself. Like, did the Blues waste the draft capital that they had, or did they go about things the right way and set themselves up nicely? So that's the focus of our discussion today. So yeah, be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel, like this video, leave a comment on your thoughts on the Blues moves, follow, rate, review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and follow us on socials at Note News Pod as well. Um, let's go ahead and get right into it, Alec. Starting with this 11th overall pick, Tynan Lawrence, a center, probably the number three center in this draft. I would say pretty consensus number three center in the draft, behind Malhotra and Bjork. Some people had him a little bit higher, which we can talk about. But the more I sit with this one, Alec, the more excited I get about it. He's 6'1", he's 185 pounds, coming from Boston University and the USHL before that. So with Boston, or let me move back to his USHL time this season. He was with the Muskegon Lumberjacks, played only 13 games, but had 17 points in those games. Went to the NCAA and had a little bit of a rougher go. 18 games, 7 points. Did play in the U18 World Juniors for Team Canada, had 6 points in 5 games. So, you know, I think his move to BU mid-season this year hurt his draft stock. Going into the winter this year, there were people that had him at like fifth overall, like certainly top 10, and he sort of fell a bit from there. But um, I think there's a lot more to be excited about than there is to be worried about after that shift. I mean, I think you can expect for plenty of players and for obvious reasons for um, someone to struggle a bit when they level up. Um, it takes time to figure some things out, but like I said, I think there's a whole lot more to like about this pick than to be worried about. So, what are your thoughts on Lawrence at 11?
Yeah, I'm really, really excited about the Lawrence pick. I think that absolutely a huge get for the Blues, for so many reasons. One, like you said, this was not a player that was supposed to be available. I think there were some pretty big surprises on draft night. Um, I feel like I saw the joke going out being drafted who have never been drafted before, which is of course an oxymoron. But like it was a collection of names that was not, I think, expected going into the night, at least not in the order that they fell. And so Tynan Lawrence to be there at 11, to me it was him and Gustafson. I was crossing my fingers and praying that the Blues could walk away with a player like that to add to their roster, because that is just a very very special talent, um, and just a very uh, beyond just organizational depth. That's a really important piece, young, controllable piece to have to just set and forget and build your team around. What Tynan Lawrence can be to this team, I think, is a middle six. At best, I would say a second line center, but probably a middle six center. And he can play center. This isn't a like hybrid forward. Like this is a dedicated center, who's defensively very, very responsible. Lawrence is a guy who's sort of known for looking for the best available pass and being able to do enough with his skating, to do enough with his passing, with his stick handling, even with his shots sometimes. He's really known to be a player who can maximize kind of when there isn't a lot of available ice space. He knows where to go to open up that ice. And he's a player with, I'll say, and I mean this with no disrespect to Tynan Lawrence, not as much sort of, skill effect as you would expect of especially a almost top 10 first round draft pick. This is a very safe, solid, and reliable prospect, but I don't want that to come off as unexciting. His baseline of tools should still provide a very, very solid level of production, and a very, very solid level of just overall play, in terms of how he fits in on the Blues. I really like the addition that this team made by drafting a Lawrence, because you didn't have any centers waiting in the wings realistically behind Dvorsky, who is
Mhm.
already, sort of having some questions arise in his, rise in the NHL. After playing his early time in the NHL, he is, yeah, being met with some criticism. Um, and so behind that, there wasn't a backup plan. And so the Blues were really scrambling and had a very clear weakness that could be taken advantage of them in seasons to come. And Doug Armstrong and Alex Steen said, we do not want that to be a weakness of the Blues any longer. And Tynan Lawrence is the start of that. So I'm really excited about the pick. I think it shores up the Blues center depth and makes that if not a position of strength for also, the reasons we're going to talk about here in a second. If that's not a position of strength for the Blues right now, then it's at least not a position of weakness. And that I think is a huge, huge win for the team to get uh, to where they are right now. So Lawrence, once he, takes makes the NHL eventually after, he'll need some years of development. This isn't a day one plug and play kind of guy. Um, this can absolutely be maybe not the home run swing like an Adam Yidacek, where the results are more exciting and more in your face and kind of more apparent, I guess I'll say. But this is exactly the kind of player you need if you are trying to build your team and seriously trying to win.
Yeah, great take for sure. It feels like the Blues didn't try to get cute, didn't try to overthink it. They just took. I mean, you said the safe player. I think this was just the right pick to take Lawrence at 11. The other players around him, Command went right after him. Malte Gustafsson was also available. I think Command was climbing up some draft boards late in this draft cycle, but the Blues, yeah, like you said, sort of got the reliable, sure thing center who's like sure thing NHL center in my mind. You said top six. I agree. I think I said this before the episode. I kind of think the Blues have their 2C of the future. You also make the trades for McTavish and McMichael. Also in that McMichael trade, you get Milton Gastrin. They just went all in, hammering that weakness, like you said. I don't know that we can say center is a weakness anymore. It's they have a lot of names there, and I think that Lawrence is one of the most exciting ones. Probably put him in the top three behind Thomas and between McTavish and Dvorsky. I think he probably belongs um, in that top group of Blues centers now. Yeah, it just seems like everything I've read and heard about Lawrence, all the tape that I watch about him, he just plays a complete game. He is not only he's not just a two-way center, like he's more than that. He he does play good defense, he does play good offense, but it's the way that he does it as well that like gets me really excited about this player. He can get the puck back if he needs to. He can move it forward. He can set it up in the ozone to make a play, and he can score well enough to play at the NHL level. One like huge green light for me about Lawrence is that his coaches just love him. The quotes about him from coaches and scouts is just that he does things the right way and he's a really hard worker. He just like those are the traits that you want in a center, right? You want uh, that type of player who is committed to the success of the team and not just the individual. And I believe he's gonna get both. He's gonna have that individual success for sure. He is talented enough to do that, but really can help drive a team, which really excites me. Um, yeah, what are some of the skills that you like about this guy? I'm thinking things, like I'm not saying these are necessarily the skills that he has, but thinking about things like skating, the shot, the playmaking ability, the defense, the IQ. What are some of the things about Tynan Lawrence that get you excited about him? What do you think he does best?
I mean, really, like I was saying earlier, he just does, I think, and this isn't the only thing I'll say, but he does everything at a very baseline level very, very well, like kind of better than you would expect already. And so it's not only that there isn't really a clear weakness to his game, but that they're all kind of small strengths. That the skill levels are turned up just enough to where he can use that to win individual matchups depending on the skater that he's going against. Um, to get more specific, I really like his skating. I really like, at his size, which is a very good size for a center, 6'1", 185 per elite prospects. At a very good size for a center, he is still able to move with a decent bit of fluidity, with a decent bit of shiftiness to shake off an opposing skater and then make a good pass over to open ice. I think similarly his IQ is really effective. I wouldn't say it's like top notch, but it's really effective at finding open ice or in creating open ice, which creates dangerous looks that can turn into goals sometimes. So I think it's a very like efficient skill set, and I think it's one that really works. Like you said, he kind of struggled with the change to the NCAA level, which is maybe to be expected. That's a really high level of competition,
Yeah, so did Gavin
and
McKenna at first, right? And
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. So I think that this is a really really good player. I'm very excited to see what impact he can make for the Blues, and I really like the skating and just the headiness and the uh, yeah, I find everything about his game to be very effective. Also, the defense. The defense is something that is really really solid.
yeah, for sure. Only thing I will add, I really do like the hockey IQ here. I think he is a really smart player, and we're gonna be able to see that up close and personal. And then just the tenacity, not necessarily high compete and high physicality. I will say high compete, but not necessarily in a very physical way. Just in
Yeah,
the
it's not as aggressive, but
right.
yeah.
He just doesn't give up on pucks. He
Mhm.
all the tape that I have seen, um, I've seen a lot of really exciting moments where he forces offensive zone turnovers and does not give up when possession goes to the other team, and he still is trying to create and get that puck back and get it set up. He is also really good at moving it up the ice, like moving through the neutral zone and breaking into the offensive zone. In that way, I think he has a lot of tenacity and just is committed to getting the puck where it needs to go. So I think that's super exciting. The only knock on his game that I have seen, not the only knock, but the main knock that I have seen on his game in a few different places is just sometimes he is trying to do things too fast and has maybe a little bit of tunnel vision on the puck rather than taking some time to look around the ice and see what play is available, what the right move might be. That's something to me that can be coached out of a player. So, I wouldn't expect that to be a super huge issue long term, especially with everything else that he does really well. So, just feels like the right pick. And if it were me in the moment, I may have gone with Malty Gustafson, who I also really liked, but maybe it's just this is what we have and I have to get excited about it. But I really do like this pick the longer I sit with it. And I think long term having a center like this is probably going to be the better call than having a left-handed defenseman behind Philip Broberg on that second pair. So yeah, super excited about this one. Do you think do you think this was the right pick when you look at some of the other players available? I think I know what your answer is probably going to be, but like next after him was Command, as I said. After that was Malte Gustafsson to the New York Islanders. Oscar Hemming was available. Uh, Ethan Belchetz was available. So with all those names still on the board, is this the name you would have picked? Do you think they made the right call here?
I think of those, Belshitz is the big one that kind of draws the most attention and is the biggest like why was this guy still on the board player left. And to that, I would still 1000% yes, this was the right pick, especially for the Blues. um, you know, Getting a center at maybe a slightly lower skill level than Ethan Belchetz and doesn't nearly play with the physical ability that a Belchetz does, but fits a position of need, can provide a lot more of a well-rounded game than a player like Belchetz, which we know they're looking for, especially for just like, these depth and very important roster pieces that kind of tie and hold everything together. I would say you're very much looking for kind of that does everything well and doesn't have any major weaknesses type of player, more so than you'd be looking for, the like I don't personally I'd rather have my middle six players to be, role players than to be like trying to win the game on their stick every time they hit the ice. Um and so I really do think that Tynan Lawrence was absolutely the right pick. You know, getting a center, getting a center with this skill level, with this ability, to me, it's like him and Belchetz were in the tier above, and everyone else around that was was probably not the direction to go, I would say. Um and then, but yeah, between the two, I would absolutely take Lawrence over Belchetz 10 times out of 10.
Hmm.
You need the center. You love the defense. The physicality of it all would have been really fun with Belchetz, but then, like, you're going to have to move someone else for him to play eventually, most likely.
Hmm.
It just makes the calculus that much harder. And so, I really do like what they did with their pick, and I really think that it was the right call.
I agree. I think it to me was maybe a little bit of a three-way coin toss between Lawrence, Gustafson, and Belchetz. But if you go by like positional need, I think center was probably the way to go. Um, yeah, don't have a ton to add there. So yeah, super excited with the way this one went down. We, I think we see him in 2 years. Definitely not this year. I mean, he's going to play for BU, and I think he's going to be on a pretty solid team. I think Caleb Malhotra is always also on that team. I think Villanova is also on that team. So could be
I
a
think
really exciting BU team there.
isn't one of the isn't Cole Hudson on that team too?
Maybe.
Am I
I
wrong about
don't
that?
know for sure, but I think BU's on the up and up here. So um, super, super exciting. I do think we see Lawrence get his first taste of the NHL within 2 years.
No.
Maybe I'm a
Sasha
little bit
Boisvert, but not. Oh,
okay.
Cole Hudson is on that team. Okay.
Nice. But yeah, maybe I'm a little high on Lawrence on that point, but I think we see him within 2 years, and I think he could easily be the two C of the future. So love the pick.
Hmm. Love the pick.
All right, after gushing about Tynan Lawrence for like 20 minutes now, let's move on to the maybe the biggest news of the night in the trade that the Blues made with the Anaheim Ducks to acquire center Mason McTavish in exchange for picks number 15 and 29 overall. So it took two firsts to get him, and I think this is the one that's drawing the most ire and the most mixed opinions from fans and from, for that matter, just people in and around the NHL as well. I think what you're gonna hear from me today is I'll probably get some pushback from some people in the comments. I think I'm more excited about this trade than it seems like most are, but no doubt it was a high price to pay for McTavish. What I really love is that they were able to get this done without giving up the 11th, and they were able to keep 16. I think looking at it that way makes me feel a lot better about this. I would have loved it even more if they did something a little bit different with their 16th overall pick, which we'll get to in a bit. Um, but look, the fact of the matter is, centers cost a lot, especially 23-year-old centers. It doesn't matter if they are a reclamation project like McTavish sort of is. It's going to cost a lot. It's going to hurt. But the Blues have needed center depth. They shored up their center depth in the prospect system with Lawrence, Dagenais, who I don't see as a center long term, but he was listed as a center, right? And then you've got Milton Gastrin that you just acquired, could be a bottom six center of the future. So they shorted up there. But the fact of the matter is, they also want to compete sooner than those guys will be available. And so between the acquisitions of Connor McMichael and Mason McTavish, you've got some options now. I think I think that despite the high price, I'm still kind of excited about it. I think um, it's risky for sure, but I think he's on a pretty decent contract that is not going to look too bad as the cap continues to rise. Um, so we can get into this a little bit more. And like I said at the top, we're going to have an episode soon where we like really dive into this and what his impact could be long term. Um, but I guess I'll just ask you this straight up off the bat. Do you think this was a waste of two of their first round picks? What's your take on the McTavish trade?
I don't think that this is at all a waste of their 2 first-round picks, and I don't know. I might think it's a little bit silly to think that. I mean, the Blues are really trying to win, and to try to win, you have to acquire players. We can bicker about the players, but they are trying to win. And all McTavish isn't like Darnell Nurse. This is like a young player with upside, former third overall pick, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, 2021, I
Um,
believe. Yeah.
like with the serious pedigree, like there's let's not you can disagree about the player, but there's real upside here that I think we can all agree on.
Oh yeah.
And for that reason alone, at least, I'm enthused by what the Blues have done. Uh, you know, they wanted to make a big swing this offseason. A lot of things fell through that I think we'll kind of get more into that discussion on our next episode. So be tuned for that when we talk about kind of all the trades and everything that's gone down. But at least for the context of draft night and the draft and everything, um, McTavish is a huge piece to get. It was almost certainly, I think, an overpay. I think that's fair to say. But like you said, centers cost money. The Blues were out of time. Now they kind of put themselves in that position, but again, they were out of time. They had to do something, and didn't want to walk away with their completely empty-handed. And then yeah, decided to pull the trigger and not make that selection overall. Um, and McTavish can really fit on this team. There can be a really synergistic relationship. The big thing that gets talked about is that defensively he is
Mhm.
just horrible. I don't know if he's horrible. To be fair, I haven't watched as much McTavish tape as I have Blues players. Um, so I don't know that he's going to be like a complete liability defensively, but he's definitely not going to be a strength defensively. Um, but just thinking about, pieces in, pieces out, um, you know what? I'm gonna save that for next episode, actually.
Yeah,
But I really think that McTavish can help this team win. And like you said, this is a really young, controllable piece on what I think is a very, very good contract. Um, Especially for, the promise that he has. To me, this is a lot like acquiring a player like Dylan Holloway before Dylan Holloway became who he is today. That was a former first round pick with a lot of upside, a lot of offensive prowess, maybe a little bit more defensively, but even then, he was not a defensive expert like he has become now.
hmm
Um, and we all see how that one turned out. So I don't know. I think to absolutely hate the move is a little bit misguided, but I like the process. Um, like I said, we'll get into the discussion of the player somewhat next episode. Which I think there are fair criticisms. I should say I don't mean to just bash on it entirely.
sure. Yeah,
There are certainly fair criticisms of McTavish, of the process, of just everything about how this went down. But I think that to pretend that there's not also upside is a little bit silly.
for sure. I think. the biggest concerns are his skating and his defense. One thing I will say on the point of the defense that I'll add to what you said is it's Anaheim, and they have been a poor defensive team for a long time. And I'm not the first to make this point, but look at Trevor Zegras, for example. Defense was a huge hole in his game,
True.
and he goes to Philadelphia, and it doesn't look as bad. I think we
It's
could
very
see,
serviceable.
for sure, I think we could see something similar happen with McTavish, where he gets into a Jim Montgomery system and onto a Blues team that across the board is better defensively than the Anaheim Ducks. And maybe his mistakes don't look as bad. Maybe he's able to improve. I think it's going to be a better situation for him defensively in one of those two ways, if not both. So that I am a little less concerned about. The skating is 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 a concern as well. But again, I think it's a little overblown, and I think it's just the type of name and the type of team and the type of season where anything that's going wrong is going to get a lot of attention. And I think I think it's just it could we could look back on this and it was just a down year and a bump in his developmental road. He's only 23 years old. I think we could be looking at this in a couple of years and thinking, thank goodness the Blues were willing to take a chance on that guy, just like we did when they made this double offer sheet move. I don't think anyone expected, this to happen with Broberg and Holloway. I don't hate the comp of that you made of it's a similar chance that you're taking on a guy to look better in your system and as he develops look worth the risk that you took to get him. I think it was a hefty price to pay. I think if they were acquiring someone of a similar caliber but in a different position, like a winger or a left-handed defenseman, this would be a huge overpay.
You'd be like
Um,
one first.
one first, yeah, and even then, you might be worried about that. But you're just gonna have to give to get. It's a cliche, but I don't hate what the Blues are thinking here. I don't hate the process at all, um, or at least the concept at all of trying to go and get a guy like McTavish, who we wanted them to take a swing. We've talked about it for weeks now. We wanted them to take a swing either in an acquisition or with one of their draft picks. We're talking about guys like Tommy Blale or Xavier Villeneuve as that type of swing that they could make if they kept their picks and made their picks. Um, they went a different direction with their next pick, but this was a swing for sure, and I think it could pay off in the long run. And just like again, I'll reiterate, look at what they've been up to the past couple of weeks. They go get McMichael and Gastrin, they get McTavish, and they get Lawrence. Center is no longer a hole, I don't think. It's very short up. Between I'll say this, short term, between McTavish, McMichael, Devo, and Pius Suter, do you not think there's at least two middle six centers in that group? Like on any given night, I think you have the flexibility. All of those guys have positional flexibility, and I think in the long run, between those four guys, you're like within the next couple of seasons, you're gonna have I would say a pretty solid center core. It's not gonna be like an elite level center core. It's not going to be one of the best center cores in the league. It's not going to be like what we saw with the Colorado Avalanche this year that they had down the middle. But it's no longer a huge gaping hole. You took some steps to fill that hole and to address that weakness. And I don't hate it. I don't hate it at all.
No, I mean, I think that point you just made about the center position and the Blues is so important to all of this. And you know, getting a guy like McTavish too supplements your core for the now and for the future. This is a
Yeah.
guy you could very easily, theoretically, keep around for long, long term. And like, if you don't think Mason McTavish can point produce enough to be like a middle six center, I just disagree. I think Mason McTavish can sleepwalk his way to like a 3C role. And if that's what he ends up being, that would be a disappointment, obviously. But he's still going to help this team win, and still going to help the calculus of their team building night to night just be so much easier. And then on top of that, if there's like team building 101, it's like have a good center core, or don't
Hmm.
have your centers be a weakness, or there's a thousand ways to word this. Be strong up the middle, all these talking points that get thrown around in hockey all the time, because it matters. There's something to that. And so to have the center position be a position of weakness for the Blues, thinking of an alternate scenario for how last night went down, where the Blues walk away with Gustafson and they trade for Adam Fox, and I don't know, they somehow attack defense or something. And basically another universe where center is really not addressed, or maybe they pick a center today in like the third or fourth round or something, and that's what they do to address the center position. Long term, that's much bigger of a worry than we need a second right defenseman, or we need, the Blues don't, but say a team needed strength on the wings. That's a much, much bigger issue that teams know how to exploit and take advantage of when you're playing the game of hockey. And so I really like see and kind of agree with the process the Blues have gone about here in acquiring McTavish and Lawrence and all these centers. So
Yeah.
um, just to make one last point in terms of why they did this, I think that yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And I'll reiterate, they kept 11, they kept 16. There were rumors from Elliot Friedman, who knows what he's talking about. I've said that so many times. I feel like there were rumors that the Blues had the 11th overall pick on the table, and the only way the Ducks were gonna do that, the thinking was that if they could flip that 11th for a roster player that could help them now. I am thrilled that that did not end up being the case. I think getting to keep that 11th overall pick and not having to give up the 16th overall pick, you can make another pick, was a tidy piece of work. I think um, it was still a big price to pay, but getting to keep those other picks, I think, goes a long way for me. And you can also think about it. It was what 15 and 29, so you end up trading Falk and Shen for Mason McTavish. I'd make that move probably. So
It's a good point.
it's a roundabout way of thinking about it, and in the moment you couldn't have known where those picks were going to end up, but mid-season, if it was the trade deadline and the Blues traded Shen and Falk to the Ducks for Mason McTavish, I probably would still think it's a bit of an overpay, but
We'd be pretty excited, I
I
think.
would have been pretty excited by that move. So just a couple additional ways to think about how this went down that have been bouncing around in my mind. So another one where I'm willing to let this one play out and reserve final judgment for some time. So I think it could pay off big. There's a high ceiling with this move.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we will talk more about Mason McTavish on our next episode, as we've said. So that one will be more what does the roster look like, and what were the other moves that the Blues were in and around Jason Robertson, Brady Tkachuk, that type of thing. So stay tuned for that one. Okay, let's talk about this other draft pick that the Blues made next at 16th overall. They take Maddox Dagenais, who listed as a center in the draft. There's some doubts about whether he will remain there, but he's 6'4", he's 198. He is drafted out of the QMJHL, the Quebec Remparts, in, let's see what his stats are this past season. In 62 games, had 62 points. Pretty balanced production, 30 goals, 32 assists. Had 2 points in 5 World Juniors games as well. Got some playoff experience in the Q, played 11 games, had 6 points with the Remparts. So uh, this one, I am I don't know, dude. I'm finding it more difficult to get excited about this one than I am about Lawrence. If the Blues had walked away with McTavish, Lawrence, and Belshets, I would have felt so excited about the future of the forward core. I still am. I think you know, this pick doesn't ruin it all for me or anything like that. There's just not that much writing on this pick, but it just I don't know. I don't know if this was the right call. Um, Probably someone that the Blues had on their board and would have picked at like 29th. It probably could have picked at 29th. I don't know. He could have gone in the second round or something like that. But I mean, they saw a guy they liked, I guess, and and wanted him. The profile on him seems to be very physical guy, very heavy hitting, but for a big player with a lot of physicality, he has some decent skill as well. Not a bad shot. So I don't know, Alec. I am trying to find ways to get excited about this, and I don't know if I can. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. Um yeah, I mean, I think the reaction draft night has been pretty consensus. And I kind of agree. Uh I think this one was kind of seems like a miss, at least on draft night. Now, can that turn out to be not the case? Can we all turn out to be fools and Dagenais is going to be amazing? Sure. And the Blues and the Blue Scouts have certainly proven their worth, and B, made some pretty big swings before, and maybe this is another one of them. But they've also been wrong before, and this one was one of those picks that happened on draft night and just kind of left you scratching your head a little bit. Um, I mean, the name gets called, and you and I were both
Hmm?
like who, like what, what's
Did they
going
say Maddox
on?
Dagenais? Yeah,
Because, uh, yeah, I mean, Blues really like their Q players, I guess. Um,
yeah,
but I don't know if that's good reasoning to draft a player. The other part of this too that is I think linked with the McTavish discussion is you trade away 15 and 29. Not disagreeing with that move, but you're giving up the chance to draft another player. So, you get to walk out of here with one more guy, and see, what your forward or your team is going to look like. And I think you really had the chance, like you said, to grab a really, maybe not difference making, but like a really exciting uh piece to help the team, like a Belshets who had clearly fallen, and I don't know, it just it falls flat a little bit. Dagenais' stats don't pop off the screen as much as several other names that were available.
hmm
Playing in the queue is, in my eyes, a little bit less exciting, I think, than playing in some other leagues. Although I do think, in terms of Canadian hockey, it's right up there, I think, with the OHL and the WHL. Um, and yeah, like you said, is center role, center trained, but maybe going to play more of a forward role for the Blues. So yeah, can be a heavy hitter, can play some defense, can score some goals. I don't know that this is going to be the craftiest playmaker, but kind of a physical, um, scrappy, uh, nice piece to have on a line. And you hear that and you think, well, what's the issue here? Well, I think the issue is that Belchets probably did that and did it a good deal better and was
yep,
available.
yep,
Um, and so the pick kind of leaves a sour taste in my mouth. Um, he's got nice speed, he's got nice skating, and he's really, like you said, physical. That's really nice, Dagenet. Um, I think it's good organizational depth for the Blues to get. And getting good organizational depth at 16 is not the worst case in the world. But for where the Blues are at in their timeline, making you pick like Lawrence to add to that organizational depth already, I would hope that they'd go in a different direction, take a little bit more something exciting. And so to me, this one's a miss. On draft night, and you know, we know what we know about these players. We could be very, very wrong. So I don't think this is the end of the world. I don't think it's a terrible pick. I think Dagenais is still going to be a good, middle six, bottom six role player that can really sort of overperform his role, especially if he is in that bottom six. Just because the Blues already have so many positions filled in the top six too, both now and in the future. Even if it ends up being more of a bottom six role player, I think he can kind of overperform the stock of that position normally. So that's something. And I don't hate the pick. I don't think it's a complete waste, and I don't think that the Blues, uh, lost their minds here. But I do think it's a miss.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, most rankings I've seen have had him in the 20s or in the late teens, not far off where the Blues picked him. I see a lot of 17 and 18 as well. But let me just read to you the profile from one of those rankings. This is from Chris Peters of Flow Hockey, who I think was one of the scouts that was highest on Dagenais. Says he's the kind of prospect that has all the things you want to see. He has size, higher end skill for a bigger player, a goal scorer's shot. He can be a competitive physical player, but has lacked some consistency in details that leave a little to be desired. Um, so there's stuff in there that you like, and you know, I don't think it's organizational malpractice to take a player like this to say we want to get tougher, uh, and have a heavy hitting player with skill. But it's just what you said. If you wanted that, Ethan Belschutz was sitting right there, and there were some people that had him as a top 10 player in this draft, certainly top 15 player in this draft. I thought there was a really good chance he could go at 11th overall. And so when it came that the Blues traded for McTavish and then the Ducks didn't take Belschutz, I was like, this fell perfectly. They get one of the best centers in the draft. They make a big trade, albeit for a hefty price. But then they could walk out of here with Belschutz as well. And we talk about the winger depth. A lot of that is on the right side. They could use a little bit more on the left side if you were going to add a winger. And Ethan Belschutz provided that too. It just felt like if you're going to get a winger in this draft, if the Blues were going to draft a winger in the first round, Belschutz would have been my pick.
Mm-hmm.
Realistically, I mean, obviously, if we could get Stenberg or McKenna or something, that would be great. But realistically, with what the Blues had available to them, if they had to pick a winger, I think Belschutz probably would have been top of the list for me. Maybe you could throw Wyatt Cullen in there as well, but yeah, it just feels like a miss to have taken Dagenais over him. I'm not saying Dagenais is a bust. I'm not saying he can't be an impactful, important player at the NHL level. It just feels like if that's what you wanted in a player, there was a better option there. And the other part that makes it more painful to me is he goes right after at 17th overall to the Utah Mammoth. So another Central team snatched him up, and so that's another tough part for me. So I don't hate the
That's such a
the
mammoth pick. Like
yeah,
they're getting
yeah,
so physical and just like, yeah.
yes, yeah. Um, I don't hate the thinking. I don't hate the philosophy of taking a player like this. There was just a better one right there that they didn't take in my mind. So tougher to get excited about this one.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I have a ton to add. And I think we've kind of in there talked about Destiny the player of just like a forward who fits in more in the wing, plays a power forward game, very heavy hitting, very physical on and off the puck. Um, I don't know if we've read his stats. Had 30 goals, 32 assists for 62 points in 62 games in the queue for the Ramparts. I think you did do that. Yeah, I don't have much to add. Just it's a miss for me. They're not without. Sorry, the Blues front office are not without criticism. I think we do a lot of time defending them on this show, but I think it's good to show also that we're not just mindlessly defending them. We do say what we believe here, and yeah, I think that
Yeah,
this one's a miss.
to the chagrin of some viewers, I will say. Um, but I feel comfortable saying this one was a miss. I mean, yeah, I'll leave it there. I think the McTavish trade is one I'll probably get some blowback on, but um, I will admit high price to pay. Would have loved if they could have done it for less, but um, still excited about it. Okay, I want to talk next briefly about this other trade that broke today. Not long before we started recording, it's the Brandon Carlo trade. So the Blues acquire defenseman Brandon Carlo from the Leafs in exchange for a couple of third round picks, number 73 and 76. Um, Thoughts on this one? So they end up adding another, I guess you could call him veteran defenseman. He I think only has a year left on his contract. Do I have that right? I'll look that up now.
Is it on Puckpedia? Yes, 1 year left
1 year
before
left.
he's a UFA.
And what's he being paid?
3.49 million by the Blues. Total salary of 4.1. Boston's paying some of that down.
Yeah. Yeah. Not a huge. I haven't had a lot of time to dive into the profile on Carlo. I think my reaction was, does that say Brandon Carlo? Not not a ton of production. I mean, he's 29 years old. He played 55 games for Toronto last year, had 7 points. So not a huge point producer. Um, yeah, I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I think I'm gonna try and spin this one.
All right, let's hear it.
So not a very exciting player, but not I think what you just brought up, not a player that you're paying really anything by today's standards. I mean, he's making like what Jake Neighbors was making on his entry level deal from like 3 years ago. So not, going against the cap, can play defense for this team, can play effective defense. And not only that, you talk about yes, agree, not really a point producer, never really has been. But you talk about going back to one of our episodes a few weeks ago now, where we broke down some of the pieces the Blues are missing based on that Stanley Cup checklist that the Athletic provided. One of them was your devoted defensive defenseman. Well, Brandon Carlo, for at least this coming season, is going to provide that. Is exactly a defensive defenseman, who, can play with some size too. I mean, this guy's 6'5", 227. This is the kind of piece that you teams look for and try and acquire. Now, that isn't to say that uh I don't think Brandon Carlo is a terrific player or even defensive defenseman, but I think he's effective. I think he can fill in at a depth role. I think he can play well really anywhere in the lineup, first, second, or third pairing. I think he can fill in minutes anywhere. Um, but yeah, I mean, you look at what the Blues were looking to get better for this season. One was upgrade the defense. How do you do that? By adding a defensive guy, preferably to your defense. This is exactly that. And they traded 2/3, I believe it was, for Carlo.
Hmm.
That's maybe about fair, maybe a little rich. So really, but they're really being aggressive in acquiring the players that they think can help make their team better and help them win next season. And I really respect that. And, that's what we've asked the Blues to do, and how we've asked them to build their team is to be aggressive and acquire who you want to. We'll maybe talk next episode on how successful or not they were there. But getting Carlo and paying what they did for him, I see as an extension of that, to where this can be your defensive piece. This can be your big-bodied, shot-blocking defensive defenseman to complement a Colton Parayko. And so, yeah, I do really like this trade for the Blues. I think it's really unexciting, to be honest. I think that Carlo as a player, and I mean no disrespect, is just a very unexciting hockey player. Um, I don't think he's going to necessarily overperform this or really surprise the Blues. I think he's very much, what you're going to get. And what you're going to get is probably going to be, 10 points, which is really, really poor. But for the minutes that he's going to play, I don't expect him to lose a lot. And that can also really help the development of your young players, and then let your offensive lines cook, which they've really been building up this offensive unit. So I once again, like with the centers, I see the strategy. I understand what they're going for. I don't disagree. Um, and I think it can work. I think there's a chance that maybe it won't look as good as you would hope, but I think that it can work. So I guess that's my thoughts on Carlo.
I don't know, Alec. You're gonna need, if you really want to talk me into this one. I think you're gonna need to. It's gonna take some more time, some more work. I don't love it. I think you make some good points, and I think there is a world where you see something close to what you're describing, where um, his size allows him to play a solid bottom four role, and you're not going to get anything really from him offensively. That's just not what you're going to get. But he plays reliable minutes and is maybe a bit of an enforcer, like I don't know, Ryan Suter, like a similar role to what Ryan Suter played a couple years ago. Um, I don't know. The defensive numbers that I'm seeing are not great, at least from last season. Um, but I'm also, as I am in most cases, willing to wait and see how he looks in the Blues system, because the Leafs were pretty bad this year, and
I mean, first overall pick.
exactly. So yeah, I mean, let me take a look at his numbers the year before that. Defensively, the year before that, when he started the season in Boston, they were a little better. They look a little better. I'm looking at the all three zones stats from Corey Schneider, and some of his defensive zone numbers do look a little better and positive for the most part. So um, maybe in a Jim Montgomery system, this feels like a Jim Montgomery type of acquisition. Would have coached Carlo, and so is going to be familiar with him. Let me see the year before that what his numbers look like defensively. A little more mixed. So it feels like year over year, not there is a little bit of tough to know what to expect with him defensively. So again, I'm willing to see how he looks back in the Jim Montgomery system and out of Toronto. So like you said, not exciting, but whether you think it's a good move or not, it's not an exciting move for sure. But with the loss of Justin Falk, they probably feel like they need a little bit of help on the back end, and maybe guys like Juracek and Lindstein aren't quite ready to step up and play that role. But only 1 year, it's fine. It's going to be fine. So yeah, I will say, sorry, I was going to leave it with something funny, but if you have a more legit point to make, then let's hear it.
Real quick. So I think two things. One is that we look at how the defense is already constructed. You've got Philip Broberg, who you're sort of looking to take an offensive step forward. You want to become more of an offensive guy.
Mhm.
Colton Parayko, who had that massive goal scoring year a while back, but isn't really known for his offense. But is still like capable, I'd say. So I'd say you've got like a maybe less than, and then a capable offensive player. Cam Fowler is a little bit more of an offensive leaning guy. Logan Mayu, I would say, is definitely more of an offensive leaning guy. And then we'll see what we have with Tyler Tucker and Theo Lindstein. I think the book is still kind of being written there. Um, Basically, what I'm trying to say is that I think if you'd want another piece, the calculus would say you'd want to get a defensive guy in there. And so I think that's what they're hoping Carlo can be. And then also one more point, I see what you're saying with the Ryan Suter comp. I think he can play a similar role to the team. But I think the comparison of player is not a
Yeah,
totally
yeah,
fair one to Carlo. I think
yeah.
Carlo is provides more than that than Ryan Suter does. He's got the big size, but also, I mean, he's 29. Um, so he's much, younger than like a 30, what was he, like 37 or something, Ryan Suter. And
He
he
was
skates with a
he
little bit
was
more.
Suter was
Was he
40.
40?
Yeah.
Yeah. I for some reason, I mean, I remembered that and I don't know, wasn't brave enough to say it. But yeah, he skates with a little bit more pace. He plays with a lot more tenacity. And offensively, yeah, is probably gonna contribute about the same as what Ryan Suter would. But that's not really what you're asking him to do. You're hoping a guy like Mayu can take that step forward. You're hoping a guy like
Mm,
maybe Lindstein can take that step forward. Like Broberg, we're watching that, and then obviously, whenever we get to see Adam Yedocek play, uh, he's looking like your number one defensive guy. So, um, yeah,
yeah,
I think not to totally disagree with what you're saying because I don't. Um, I think there's a lot of wait and see on Brandon Carlo, but
sure.
I don't know. I think there's a world where this works pretty well. And then yeah, last point, like you said, it's a 1 year deal. Is there a bad thing? Is there such a thing as a bad 1 year deal in sports?
Maybe not. Maybe not. Last thing I'll say is that it could be worse. We could be the Toronto Maple Leafs, who
We could
um,
be way worse. We could be the Toronto
get
Maple
two
Leafs.
third round picks. Do you remember what they gave up for Brandon Carlo?
No.
It was a first round pick, a fourth round pick, and Fraser Minton. So it could be worse. So I wonder if Alex Steen is planning to call up the Bruins and request that package in return for Brandon Carlo. Do you think we could? I wonder if we could get it done.
Also, Carlo had his best year under Jim Montgomery.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So again, willing to see how it plays out. Um, all right, I think that's all we have to talk about. Oh, I will say, real quick, the Blues selected with their remaining third round pick that they held on to. They did take a defenseman, uh, Luke Scherer, I think might be how you say it. Took him 75th overall. He also will be playing for Boston University, but put up some pretty
How
solid
about that?
numbers. Yeah, yeah. He has put up some pretty
Yeah, that's
solid
a name I'm
numbers
actually familiar with, which is
in the
surprising.
the U.S. national team developmental program. So, um, yeah, could be pretty cool. Really good skater, it seems like. Solid mobility. I'm seeing rush defense skills, speed, stick work, precision. So I don't. Yeah, I mean, don't know much about him, but that sounds exciting to me. So not bad. I'm glad they did take a defenseman with that pick. I think they had a mission to go forward heavy in the first round, uh, and it seems like nothing was going to stop them from taking forwards. But yeah, glad they rounded it out a little bit. The draft continues. They've got a lot of later round picks that I'm sure we won't have much analysis on, but yeah, we'll be back pretty soon, as we said, with a discussion on McTavish and the other trades that the Blues were in and around that they didn't make.
Check that out.
So check that out for sure. That'll be a fun discussion. We'll take a look at how the roster is looking for next season, maybe what the lines could be, and how the Blues could deploy the new players that they've acquired. So stay tuned for that. We'd appreciate if you would like this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow, rate, and review on Spotify and Apple. Those are truly the best ways to help us out. And share the pod with fellow Blues fans. If you wouldn't mind, that would go a long way as well. You can find us on socials, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Note News Pod, where we post a lot of other great stuff. We love to interact with anyone and everyone over there. So thanks for following along. You can also find our Q&A form linked in the show notes. It's a Google form. Ask as many questions as you want, fill it out as many times as you want. What do you want us to discuss? Maybe about these draft picks that the Blues just made, maybe about the trades they've made. So be sure to leave us some questions and we'll discuss that on an episode. That will do it for us this time. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time. And let's go Blues.
Let's go Blues.